Okay, good morning still. I'm Ellen. I'm not gonna bore you too much with telling you who I am. I'm just gonna let my images speak. I'm also one of those idiots that didn't add my presenter notes, so excuse me for having a little paper in my hands. Arlindo, thank you for the invitation. And olá e obrigada. Estou muito feliz de estar aqui e espero mergulhar aqui em breve. So when Arlindo contacted me, he asked me to actually talk a bit about not just the technical side of taking images, but how do you create images that inspire to preserve the oceans and all life around it. And that's actually what I try to do. I don't think that images like this just happen, and I also don't think that taking an image is the accumulation of all technical skills you have and knowing your camera inside out. There's this extra factor, so you have to be able to dive in a very good way, and you have to be able to take images, but there's something more, and to me it's, I don't try to capture just what I see, I try to capture what I feel in the moment, and I think if I can capture that and the viewer can see it, they will be inspired to protect the ocean. So how do I do it? And Brandy also talked about that. You have to connect with your subject, with your species. You have to learn all about the species. You have to do research, because if you don't do all of that, then you just miss a lot of chances to take a good image. And I was lucky enough to live in the Cayman Islands for 12 years. It's also there that I started diving at a later age. And of course, I lived very close to the sandbar, and I was in the water like mornings, evenings, learned all about the species. And of course, then you can go back at the right time and all the tourists are, have left and take the images. And if you know the species and the subspecies, you can apply it then when you go to a different destination and nail the shot there. Sharks, it's a different game. You have to really do your research, not just about sharks and how they, one species behaves, but every kind of shark is different. So I would also like to take a little minute to say that you do not have to depend on your dive guides, on your instructors. You should be a diver in your own right. Do your research and then enter the water with a species. I'm a Dan Europe ambassador, and I do believe I have had some health issues in the past myself, and I think if you're not ready for an environment, you shouldn't be there. So if something happens on a dive, it's your mistake, not the dive guide, not the dive operator. You should be a diver in your own right. So diving with sharks, I did my research everywhere I go with sharks, tiger sharks, oceanics, Galapagos sharks. And just to give an example, I always shoot with a fisheye lens. So if the shark is 2 meters away, the shark looks tiny. So I like them right in front of my lens. But with a shark, you don't allow them to touch you, because then they can feel if you're strong, if you're weak. Always keep your distance and have a firm approach. But I always go a bit further in my research. So I learned with Christina Zenatu, who was a presenter last year, to shark myself. Not because I did a shark feeding course, not because I wanted to feed the sharks, but because I wanted to feel their most instinctive behavior and how it was to be in the water at that point. And I think it made me a better photographer. It's not only species I want to do my research on, but also an environment. And when I went to take images in the caverns in Mexico to tell the story about these underwater supplies of water, which are super critical for our planet, I just became a cave diver. And I invested in diving skills, in dive training, not just in camera gear, not just in dive gear. And I think it's super important, even when you're a diver for 20 years, 30 years, to keep investing in your diving skills. And sometimes, as a photographer too, dive without that camera. I don't think many photographers do that, and I don't think we have the best reputation, so I like to practice what I preach. And then I discovered in that cave environment that I'm not good at staging shots. I'm better at feeling my shots. So this is on a dive with Robbie Schmidtner. He's one of the best-known cave explorers in the Yucatan. And we went for a dive, and I needed to take a shot of him with a flag for an Explorers Club expedition. And he said, well, I will bring you to this beautiful area in Dos Pisos. And then we take the shot, and then we drop the camera, and we just go for a nice dive. But I was swimming behind him, and he goes like super fast, and he doesn't use his cookies, whatever I do. I'm like a very conservative diver, and I'm a very safe diver. I like to think of myself. But then I saw something happening. He had these lights, and he was going from room to room. And I said, something's going to happen. I had my settings right, like Brandy and Nuno. I'm always prepared. I'm working on the settings the whole time. And I saw him entering the other room, and he lighted up the whole scene for me. And I just finned as hard as I could, took one shot, went to the other room, took his shot, dropped the camera, and had an amazing dive. So how do we take these images that can inspire other people? I do have another talk about the 4 secrets of taking an image. It's very simple, so I will skip that hour. It's 4 steps. You observe, you connect, you wait, and you shoot. So that's photography. It's very simple. That's 1 hour done. Now, how to get those images that inspire? Light. Light is the holy grail of photography. And my secret is that I use the available light, and then I try to blend it in with a little bit of artificial light, but it doesn't always have to be strobes. So I use a lot of video light, a small touch of a solar light, to better define the subject. And then you can even shoot against the light. Being prepared at all times, because these moments, they don't just happen. It's not just luck. This is like 1 week in January in Norway in the cold, not having seen one orca. Going back another week in the cold, clouds, rain, sitting on a little dinghy, waiting until you connect with a pod of orcas, going in, getting out, freezing yourself. But if you're going in the water and your camera is not set up right, or you don't feel the shot, you miss the moment. These things happen in the blink of an eye, and it's not luck, it's dedication and preparation. Light adds to taking images that inspire, but also intimacy. When you're a part of the pod, when the animals accept you, it's one of the most humbling experiences you can have, when they just keep on doing what they're good at. And also, like Brandy told you, if you have a weather day, it's easy to say, oh, I'm here in the Bahamas, can't take a shot, it's raining, it's stormy. Well, this was taking on the back of a boat on a weather day. We couldn't get in the water, and I was just playing with my camera. And it's one of my favorite shots. I call it gossip, and it reminds me of those ladies, how do you call it in England? Curtain twitching, looking behind the curtain and seeing what's going on. Speaking about being part of the pod, I do take almost all my shots with the fisheye lens, and that allows me, well, it's actually my third eye, so I can shoot blindly, and if you know that everything seems further away, the orca on the left, he's right next to me, because you can't see still, so I was just hunting with them in Norway for herring. And one step further than the intimacy is this close contact. And again, like the blending of light, it's a very delicate balance, because you don't want to be the intruder with an animal. You want to just you want them to carry on doing what they're doing. So if it's a cruising shark, and then, of course, blend in with the light, the available light, the shadow. You have to think about so many things. Photography, how many people own a camera here? How many people go in and do one dive, and then for the next dive go somewhere else? Oh, you return and return and return to the same place? Because that's the thing you need to do to take good images. So have the close contact, have the animals doing what they're used to do. Belugas are very curious, and try to capture that in your image. A seal in the Faroe Islands, the place where I lived for a long time. Before a storm, behavior changes, and trying to capture that. Mating and courting behavior of Caribbean reef squid, they're not bothered by me being there, but I don't chase, I just observe. Connect, wait, and shoot. And if I can't connect, I'm not going to take the picture, because then it's not a good picture. A whale, just sleeping, curious sperm whale at the surface, or a manatee just coming up, keeping warm in the springs. So how do I create the images? I think about light, I try to have the intimacy, being part of the pot, and I try to have that close contact. And a few of the images we all contributed to the exhibition of diving talks, and Arlindo asked me to give a bit of explanation of how I took them. I shall just go and explain one. This was taken in Kona, Hawaii, and it was a week of storms. So 3 days we couldn't do this night dive. It's the Manta night dive, very famous. And the 4th day, we were allowed in the water, but I was on a trip with Howard and Michelle Hall, and Howard was filming. So we were told not to use lights. So the first day, so day 4, I observed, and I said, I can't really do something without the lights. There was a big swell. I had an alternobaric vertigo. I didn't feel well, so I got out of the water. But I observed the animals from the surface. And the next day, I said, okay, what am I going to do? I have to be smart about this. This is my last chance. And I skipped dinner, got into my wetsuit. Everybody was still having dinner. And there was a talk on the dive boat. Doug Perrine, he's a very well-established photographer. I missed that talk. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to offend him. But I got in the water with somebody from the boat to keep me safe, because I knew I was having an issue. Went into the water, put a little bit of this solar light on the manta and got a shot. But actually, I didn't need that little bit of light, because by the beam on the boat, we had a beam on the boat that was like moonlight. This shot is taken without the extra light. So actually the beam is lighting the white belly, and that white belly is reflecting then, so I could define the second manta. So there's a lot of thinking and preparation going on. I'm going to skip these because we're running out of time. But I do have a soft spot for whiskers, and I think it's also one of the secrets in my photography. In 2015, I went to the Faroe Islands in the UK, where I live now, and I just fell in love with these guys. There's soul food, I think. A lot of my photography is healing. I had a challenging life with my children, and the ocean gave me so much healing back, so I just want to give back to the ocean and tell stories and preserve what's left, and tell also the stories of these seals. So in 2015, I also went to the ice floes in Canada, Ile de la Madeleine, the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And when I was young, I was inspired. I saw this image of a seal in the arms of Brigitte Bardot. And I said, oh, poor seals, they're getting clubbed. But when I visited the place, it was actually not a story about clubbing of poor seals for their fur. It was a story about the ice that was melting. So I made it it's my dedication to go again, again, and again, get the whole story. And I do tell that story in schools for children, all ages, because to me, they are the ice of climate change. It's one of the species that needs ice to breed. So the moms swim from Greenland to the ice floes. They find the ice, they get the pups, they feed the pups 14 days, and then they're very promiscuous, so they go back mating with the males that have followed. And then these pups need ice for another 2 to 4 weeks, and if the ice melts, they all die. So mortality rates in bad ice years can be 90 to 95%. So that is the story I want to tell, not just with the ugly images about the drowning seals, but with the beautiful images so people would care, because who cannot care about animals like this? It's not easy photography. It's minus 40 degrees sometimes. I had frostbite on one toe in 2020, but still I'm very happy I went, because that was a bad ice year. We were told not to come, but we went, and I could take images of seals just drowning in front of my eyes. Of course, you want to help them, but you can't help them all. I'm not so cold-hearted that I didn't try to help it, but it was just useless. Even the moms couldn't get to the pups to feed them. The ice was just melting in front of us, and it was very bad conditions to dive in. That my photography had a positive impact, I like to believe, because I had the honor to be invited at the United Nations and speak in the General Assembly for head of states at the Ocean Conference in 2017. And until now, it's one of the biggest honors. Well, until today, because now I'm here at Diving Talks, which is also a huge honor. So thank you. Extra images were provided by Michael Maas, Tom St. George, and Julia Gugelmeyer. And of course, thank you, Dan Europe, for the Element and the Explorers Club, and Blancpain for supporting me.